Hello and welcome to another Alzheimer's Prevention Talks. I'm Dr. Doris Molina Henry. I'm an associate professor of research neurology at USC, Epstein Family's Alzheimer's Therapeutic Research Institute. And I'm also part of the leadership team of the Alzheimer's prevention trials for the APT Webstudy. The APT Webstudy was launched with funding from the National Institute on Aging and the National Institutes of Health. Ongoing support is generously provided by the Epstein Family Foundation and Gates Ventures. The APT Webstudy is led by researchers from the Epstein Family Alzheimer's Therapeutic Research Institute at the Keck School of Medicine of the University of Southern California, the Brigham and Women's Hospital, and the Cleveland Clinic. As part of the APT Webstudy team, I am so excited to present another Webstudy webinar. This is our third live event with APT Webstudy participants like you, and we're grateful for your continued interest and participation in Alzheimer's disease research. Today's topic was driven by our participants, everyone who joined previous webinars and submitted questions. We have received many questions from our engaged audience, but one topic that rose to the top was long-term brain health and minimizing the risk of cognitive decline as we age. Today, we'll cover research-supported, evidence-based activities to improve brain health, lifestyle interventions that can improve cognition among people at risk for memory loss, and how participating in the APT Webstudy can help you take charge of monitoring your brain health. Now, before we dive in, we have a few programming notes. We'll have time for Q&A at the end of the discussion, so you'll have an opportunity to ask us questions. Feel free to share your questions in the Q&A box throughout the event. All questions will be anonymous, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. To ask questions, click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see it, you may have to click the More button on the right-hand side. Once you type in your question, don't forget to hit the Submit button to ensure our team receives it. During the Q&A, we will be answering questions about this topic and Alzheimer's disease research at large. If you have any technical questions with your assessments or need assistance with the APT Webstudy itself, please reach out to our dedicated call center at 1-858-877-3135, and you'll see that number on the chat as well. Finally, we are recording this conversation for people who couldn't join us. We'll be following up with everyone who registered when this video is available. You are more than welcome to share the recording with friends, family, or anyone interested in participating in Alzheimer's research, or better yet, invite them to the next one. With that, I'd like to introduce you to our guest today, Dr. Heather Snyder. She is the Senior Vice President of Medical and Scientific Relations at the Alzheimer's Association. In this role, she oversees the association's funding initiatives that accelerate Alzheimer's and dementia research. Dr. Snyder serves on the executive team for the U.S. Pointer clinical trial, which evaluated whether lifestyle interventions protect cognitive function. Personally, she is an esteemed colleague with whom I and other members of the APT Webstudy leadership team have had the distinct pleasure of collaborating with over the years. I want to thank you, Dr. Snyder, for your time and for speaking with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Molina Henry. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. It's also a particular pleasure to be here with you, Doris, as someone that I've had the privilege of working with for many years and looking forward to continuing to do so.
Likewise, the honor is truly, truly mine. And so as we kick things off, why don't we start with some of our questions that we know we've heard from participants and they've been eager to hear, they've been eager to learn from you. And we'd like to start to talk a little bit about the US Pointer study. Could you tell us a little bit about what the trial was designed to do and the rationale behind it?
Yeah, and maybe I'll put it in context of a report
Yes.
that the Alzheimer's Association published actually just yesterday, where we asked
Congratulations.
Americans about brain health. 90% of Americans agree that brain health as we age is important, but less than 10% know what to do about it. And that really aligns with a question that we at the Alzheimer's Association were getting all of the time. My mother, my father, my sister, my brother had Alzheimer's or another disease that caused dementia. What can I do about it? And so we really, with that in mind, took on the US Pointer study, which is a short way of the full name of the trial, which is the US study to protect brain health through through reducing risk, through lifestyle to reduce risk. And so we shortened it to US Pointer because that's a nice wordy title. This study really had that goal of, could we answer that question definitively of what can I do? It was a 2-year clinical trial that was designed to evaluate really the best evidence that we have in science of a lifestyle intervention that simultaneously was targeting multiple risk factors to see, could we protect cognition, memory, thinking, and reasoning in older adults age 60 to 79 who are at an increased risk for cognitive decline. Through the study, which we had sites all across the country in Northern California, North Carolina, Texas, Illinois, and Rhode Island, we enrolled over 2,100 older adults that were engaged in this trial, and they were put in one of 2 intervention groups, either self-guided or structured. And while both groups received information on increasing physical activity, improving nutrition, cognitive and social challenging of their brain, and health monitoring, particularly around heart health and metabolic health, they did differ in these 2 interventions in terms of the structure, the accountability, and the support that individuals provided. And over the course of the 2 years, we evaluated the cognition of the individuals to determine if there was an impact.
That's terrific. And thank you for that context. I have to highlight that it was a privilege to have seen and witnessed the delivery of the results when they were shared last year. And that was such a fantastic moment for the field, but also very empowering for the general public to see that there's potential and that there is impact of protecting your brain and doing so with tools that you have within your reach. With that, what were some of the additional takeaways of the study, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main takeaway, which you alluded to, was that the structured intervention that we saw, so really that very specific intervention, we saw a benefit on cognition of those in the structured group compared to the self-guided group. And when we look at the how this translates to a clinical benefit, like what does that mean? You know, the picture is a really nice graph, and you see a separation of the 2. But what does that mean to the individual looking at that? What does that mean to the participant? Modeling, when we looked at this compared to other studies, it suggests that those in the structured group had 1 to nearly 2 years of slowing of their cognitive clock, if you will, meaning that their brain was around 2 years younger than somebody in the self-guided at the end of the trial. And so that benefit, when you have a relatively short intervention of 2 years, and then looking at that modeling, and a conservative estimate is that there was a benefit then of 2 years of slowing of the cognitive clock of an individual. So really suggests that while we saw a benefit on cognition for both groups compared to where they started, we did see that greater benefit in the structured group, and it has that translation of slowing their cognitive aging. And a big question is, well, what happens after the 2 years? And so we are continuing. The participants in this trial are amazing, and they have volunteered to not only be in the original trial, but for us to continue to follow them with an annual cognitive. So we measure their memory, their thinking, their reasoning, as well as just an overall clinical evaluation every year. So we can ask the question of what's that long-term impact, with the goal of saying, is this intervention not only benefiting cognition in an at-risk population, but are we able to actually change outcomes related to dementia? We don't know that yet, but that's certainly one of the questions we want to ask.
And that is huge. And I just want to highlight for our audience that if they want to read a little bit more on the US Pointer study, you can find that resource on the chat. It's been made available for you. We will continue to talk a little bit more about that. I am curious, in terms of the outcomes of the study and the findings, was there anything surprising? Were they different than what you had expected or anticipated?
I mean, our goal was to ask the question of whether the structured intervention differed from the self-guided in terms of cognition. And we saw a greater benefit of the structured. And so we did see that difference. And this informs what we need to do now. I think our challenge, rather than thinking about whether the findings were different, our challenge is how do we now translate this into our community? If we look at diabetes and the space of diabetes, there was a clinical trial that demonstrated a lifestyle behavioral intervention had a benefit on reducing diabetes, the risk of diabetes in a large population. And it took almost 20 years to translate that to a program that was then available. And I think all of you on this webinar, we don't have 20 years. We need this now. And so we're working actively with 10 teams around the country to think about that translation from a trial into the community and how do we do this. And so while we've learned a lot in the trial along the way that's really informing that translation, but we have a lot of work to do, and we're continuing to do that now.
And would you say that some of that work done so far has influenced particularly the recent report on the Alzheimer's Association facts and figures, and how you have emphasized brain health, particularly in the coming years, is an important priority for the Alzheimer's Association and for dementia research as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, brain health is part of the mission of the Alzheimer's Association. We
Correct.
certainly
Yes.
include it in our remit as an organization, but absolutely in terms of the direction and really laying the foundation for what are the information, what's the resources that we need to be sharing in our communities and be providing, and what are the specific recommendations that we can make. The association for a long time has had something called the 10 healthy habits, or the 10 ways to love your brain. And that's informed by science for sure. There's a lot of information out there about what are the habits, what are the things that we can be doing that benefit our brain health. So, exercising, eating a balanced diet. So things that have like the nutrients that your brain needs, protecting your head. So wear a seatbelt in the car, wear a helmet when you're on a bike. If you're a smoker, consider slowing down or stopping for your overall health. And probably one that's emerging more readily, I think more and more in all of the work we're doing, is sleep and the importance of getting a good night's sleep. And it's really that quality of sleep that becomes so important in benefiting brain health. And then of course, managing your numbers, your heart health, your metabolic health, and staying on top of those, know your numbers, manage your numbers, and address those, because that also has benefits for your long-term brain health.
That's outstanding. And thank you for going through some of those so specific domains and specific areas that we should emphasize and focus on. And the sooner we do, the greater the impact, I would suspect. In addition to that, we know that the field as a whole has moved earlier and earlier stages of the disease, with the recognition that when we address the disease at the earlier stages, we're likely to see better impact and minimal and less impact of the disease over time. And so this is all part of the mission of prevention and the hopes that we can address the disease before individuals begin to experience the symptom. It's in part what we're hoping to do. So you've talked about lifestyle, you've talked about reducing risk. As we talk about brain health more broadly, where does research participation fit in, and why does it matter? We have our participants ask us often, what is the impact that they are having, particularly by completing their assessments, by continuing to attend their 6 month, participating every 6 months in the study assessments. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the reasons the association is so proud of our work together, and the work of the team at USC and the ATRI, and the APT Webstudy is really an important contribution to the larger research ecosystem. So to those of you that are joining us from this study today, thank you, because it's really only because of you, or whether we're talking about the participants in US Pointer, we wouldn't have this information, we wouldn't know the next direction or the future directions to go, have a greater understanding of the science or what's changing if we didn't have you participating in these studies. So maybe just looking at the app Webstudy, which is following participants that have raised your hand and joined this study over time and collecting all of this important information around aging and cognition and brain health. This gives us more information, more ability to actually understand what are those changes that we might be seeing, what are the measures that we should be using, and this is really important in informing the future of clinical trials of more broadly. But I'd also tell you that one of the other really important aspects of something like the app Webstudy is that you have a population of individuals that we have this information on, that have raised their hand and said, we're interested in research, we're interested in clinical trials. And so you're now more readily poised for that next trial. So a case in point, you have a 2-year intervention. So US Pointer, 2-year intervention. It took us almost 4 years to recruit for that intervention, right? If we had a population that we've been able to shorten that even to a year or 2 years, right? The ability to have results and have information to help inform where we go from there and continuing to build out our toolbox, we're able to compress that timeline, and that's powerful. So whether you're participating in a clinical trial or there's other ways that you're engaging, I think all of that is so incredibly important at driving the science forward. We often talk about the 2 biggest barriers in moving science forward. It's never a shortage of ideas. It's more a matter of, can we fund it? Can we do it that way? And then do we have the participants that are able to do it, that are willing to do it? And those tend to be some of the barriers in moving us forward. So I'll go back to where I started and just say huge thank you to those of you that are on this call that are part of the app Webstudy or other studies, because you're driving the science forward. And we recognize, I talk to people all the time and they say clinical trials not for them. And that's also, there are other ways to engage, right? So,
Yes.
And change the dialogue. Yeah. I'll often give talks and say, tell your story, share your perspective, share your lived experience with your neighbors, with people at your church. By raising your voice, you're part of that solution. You can also advocate. You can talk to your local, your state, or your federal legislators about why research is important, how you're seeing it play out in your own care, and why you're worried about Alzheimer's, why you're worried about brain health or frontal temporal dementia or any of the other diseases that cause cognitive impairment and dementia. And tell that story, because it's really through that and through that conversation and that awareness that we're gonna continue to be able to have the funding to invest in the science, and then have all of you that are raising your hand and participating to move those studies forward.
Well, that's outstanding. Thank you for highlighting those things specifically, because I think oftentimes individuals want to even get more involved and find different ways of counteracting or doing this for their loved ones, doing this for those that they have lost, doing this for their families in the future, and finding multiple ways in which they can engage with the field and engage with the research and help move it forward is of the essence. It's imperative. I really appreciate your comments, particularly around how things like this, or how studies like the APT study could influence advancing study design, advancing enrollment rates, and contributing to timely enrollment of clinical trials, which is one of those greater barriers that is a threat, as a matter of fact, in completing and conducting a study. So we do learn a lot from participants in this study. We learn from every measure. We learn from every six-month assessment they complete. We learn from every cognitive functional index assessment that they complete. And the information that they provide us allow us to create better tools, better pre-screening approaches, better ways of engaging individuals, and of engaging with trials, better ways of designing trials that would inevitably allow us to continue to advance and accelerate the field as we have in the last few years. So it is a concerted effort, and we work very closely as well through the Trial Match program, which enables us to find ways to match individuals for those future studies that they are ideally suited for and are suited for them.
Maybe I could just
Yes,
comment for
please
Doris,
do.
because I think one of the we've talked so much about what participants have enabled or are enabling the trials, but I'd also say and the science, we also learn so much from them.
Yes.
The stories that we hear and just their experiences help us inform how we can do things better. We heard, throughout US Pointer, for instance, we would hear from our
Yes.
participants on, this aspect was a challenge. We had certain ways of entering information that they didn't like. So we worked with our participants in many ways to figure out how could we adjust for that. And that helps the science be as rigorous as it can be. And so I think really our participants have been a partner along the way, and none of this information would be really possible without them. So it's that partnership as well that I think is so important for us to continue to foster. And again, I just thank you.
Oh, that's terrific. Yes, thank you. A resounding thank you. And thank you for really helping connect the dots. We are very proud and grateful for the participants' time and their effort and for their presence here today. We'd now like to invite questions from our audience. Please feel free to share your thoughts or ask anything about what we've discussed today. If you have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and I will start with the first question. So some are specifically follow-up questions on the US Pointer study. Were people who've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease included in the Pointer study? And can you explain the interventions in more detail?
Yeah, so this was really an at-risk population, which so I appreciate that question and the ability to clarify. This was a population of individuals that were thought to be at an increased risk, and actually 78% of our population of participants had reported a family history of cognitive impairment or memory loss. And then they were individuals that had room for improvement in terms of some of the lifestyle intervention components. And so the very specific recipe, if you will, it's on the link that was included in the chat. But the recommendations that we worked with participants in the structured group and then were also shared with the self-guided included physical exercise, 30 to 35 minutes of moderate to intense activity 4 times a week, including strength and flexibility exercise twice a week. Cognitive engagement, so that continuing to use it or lose it, if you will, of your brain we included a computer-based training program. We worked with Brain HQ, and that was 3 times a week for 30 minutes, but that was only a piece of the cognitive engagement. It actually also included regular engagement in other activities that really challenged an individual, whether it be, going to a museum or going to doing something in your community that would challenge your brain. We had individuals that found other ways of engaging in their cognitive cognitive exercise, if you will, in their community, whether it be taking a class or learning a new language or other things like that. The nutrition the diet piece was using the MIND diet, which emphasizes dark leafy vegetables, low saturated fats, whole grains, limited sugars. And I will just note that there's a number of different diets that are out there, whether it be the MIND, the DASH, the Nordic, or the Mediterranean, and they all are similar in that of emphasizing dark leafy greens, vegetables, lower sugars, and unsaturated fats. And then it was health monitoring. So continuing, individuals came in every 6 months and had check-ins on blood pressure, weight, and then it was really a managing recommendations to manage those numbers. So if you had metabolic or cardiovascular risk of any sort, or numbers that were maybe into the levels outside of the quote unquote normal range, recommendations for follow-up with that. And so it was, and I will just note, it wasn't everything like on day one. It was a build up towards this aspect of the intervention in the structured. The self-guided group received the same information, but it was in a less team meetings. There were 6 team meetings compared to 38 group meetings that happened as part of the structured group. So hopefully that helps. But again, there's more information on that link that was included in the chat with, I think, more details about the individual components of the intervention.
Outstanding. I think that's incredibly helpful. And these are along the lines of the questions that we typically get. So it's really reassuring to hear about the evidence base supporting that these specific efforts that are within one's reach and can be used to reduce risk and also protect your brain over time. We have another question, and this is a little bit slightly different and shifting into another area, but is there a relationship between hearing loss and dementia?
Yeah, great question, and one that I think we're getting increasingly frequently. Uh, there have been studies that have suggested or shown that association between hearing loss and cognitive impairment in individuals. And there was actually a large study that was conducted and led out of Johns Hopkins University that looked at if they could intervene with hearing aids, for instance, in individuals. Were they able to benefit cognition? Were they able to not see that same association? And in the study overall was negative, meaning that they were not able to reduce the risk of cognitive decline in individuals with hearing aids. But, and this is a big but, in individuals that had other risk factors, so cardiovascular, particularly cardiovascular risk factors, so their heart health was also adding to their risk, they saw a benefit when they did intervene. So it suggests that there's really this synergy that we see among these risk factors that may increase somebody's risk for cognitive decline. And that's where I think, coming back to US Pointer, when you simultaneously target multiple risk factors, it's that
Yes.
synergy where you may see that benefit. I think in the question specific to dementia, but in general, our hearing health is part of our brain health. So having that conversation with your healthcare provider or your doctor around your hearing health is a really important component of the overall thinking about your brain health and how to keep your brain as healthy as you can as you age.
Outstanding. I think that's along the lines of the excellent recommendations, and also being cognizant that when we think of dementia, when we think of cognitive decline and cognitive changes, it entails a number of different things, and that as individuals and holistic approaches to entail that we tackle different aspects of the way in which we live and the way in which we interact with the outside world, and how we keep risk at bay all the time when possible across our body. Could you comment on the active study? Are you familiar with the active study and whether there is a benefit to using Brain HQ?
Yeah, so I mean, the active study is one of the longest studies that's followed individuals. So for context, the active study was actually about, I think, 25 years ago now, and it tested this Brain HQ, which is this computerized cognitive training program in individuals. And what they found after 10 years, they actually found a benefit on speed of processing, which is one of the brain changers, or one of the cognitive changes that we often see in individuals with Alzheimer's and other dementia, other cognitive impairment and dementia. And then they've just reported out their 25-year, I think it was 25-year follow-up of individuals, and they continue to see a benefit for those individuals that participated in the trial and then had a booster program of the intervention or of the brain training, and they've continued to see that long-term benefit in participants. There's some challenges in the interpretation of the analysis, in terms of you obviously have people over 25 years that fall off. Are they falling off because they're more likely experiencing cognitive change and others? So, and the study authors, which also was actually led out of a team of Johns Hopkins, certainly did their best to try to address that. And their conclusion is that engaging in this kind of speed of processing type of cognitive training has a benefit. I will tell you that there is another group in Australia that has done some work in terms of another kind of form of a cognitive training type of program, and they've also seen a benefit in their participants. Now, I'm sure one of the top questions I often get is, well, do you have a specific list of things I should do? And we don't. We know it consistently. What we see is it's activities that challenge your brain. So what are you reading the same book over and over again? Probably not challenging your brain. Watching that TV show that you enjoy is probably not challenging your brain. People ask about crossword puzzles. It's unclear, or Sudoku, all unclear. There's no data to tell us that is benefiting or challenging your brain in the way that's going to be most beneficial. So I would say find things that you find challenging that push you to learn new information and build up those brain connections, if you will. And that's what the science tells us is the most beneficial. And we'll continue to work towards having that list of activities and those specific things that that we need and want to do to be able to answer that question. In each of these aspects, we want to know, what can I specifically do? When do I need to start? And how long do I need to do it? And I will tell you that we have again, when I come back to say our participants were so amazing, we have so much data as a part of US Pointer that we're trying to ask some of those questions now with the data. We're trying to say, what does somebody need to do to see the benefit? How much do they need to do? When do they need to do it? Is this better than that in terms of contributing to the benefit? And we still are working through that data and that analysis now.
It's exciting to continue to see more and more effort and time and investigations focused on answering those questions. I think we'll see a lot of exciting findings come through the years, and I think that it's exciting to see how US Pointer has pioneered some of those exciting developments and really has encouraged and motivated the field to move in that direction. Now, on more complex questions, can you speak a little bit, based on what you know, are some of the federal financial cuts that could be affecting Alzheimer's trials? How are they affecting them? And also how the Alzheimer's Association is supporting investigators as well in the field to continue to support the progress that has been made in the last few years. And also, you could speak to how it's impacting maybe the APT web study. And I'm happy to join in that conversation.
So maybe big picture first. And, like the participants of the US Pointer trial, our advocates through the Alzheimer's Association, we are a patient-based science advocacy organization, and our advocates have been incredible, along with our congressional champions, really in the last 15 years at contributing to increased investments at the federal level in Alzheimer's and the related diseases, really advancing research significantly. And we're seeing that play out now with new treatments that are available and approved for Alzheimer's, new tools that are cleared by the FDA for Alzheimer's, but also a whole lot that is coming down the pipeline in terms of tools for really detecting the biology in some of these other diseases, clinical trials that are targeting really a diverse number of approaches as well in all of these diseases. And that's been because of the greater understanding we have of the biology. We're seeing that translate. So we've seen that funding really build this momentum forward. Today, and certainly it's one thing that we're watching very closely at the Alzheimer's Association in terms of the impact. And we certainly, I think there had been initially several studies that had received notification of changes that were going forward. And we partnered, the Alzheimer's Association partnered with the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research to launch a funding program on bridge funding at the time to help individuals that were kind of in this interim stage, that as changes may be going on or there were some things that were unclear about what they might be, we wanted to make sure that the science was able to continue. And I believe together we funded about 20 different studies with that bridge funding to continue to move forward. But I would also tell you that at least the levels of funding for Alzheimer's and related diseases, we have not seen cuts play out at this point in time. In fact, I think the most recently approved budget included a slight increase in funding of around $100 million in funding in this space. Now, there have been other changes that have happened in terms of how grants are paid out. And so we're kind of we're watching all of this balance out, and we'll continue our bridge funding program to ensure that the science moves forward and moves forward as rapidly as it can. But of course, ensure that the federal dollars that have been allocated by our lawmakers are being put to work to move the science as fast as it can.
That's exciting to hear. It's encouraging to hear, especially when there's there's some tensions happening around us, and it's exciting to continue to see the work move forward. The efforts of the APT Web Study will continue. We are continuing to build on what we've done in the past, and you have now, as an APT Web Study participant, experience participating in new assessments like the branch study, which really aim at looking at other aspects of cognitive function and allowing us to better detect changes very, very early in the disease process so that we could intervene a lot sooner. We're continuing to see trials aimed at prevention move forward and newer trials in development. So it's based on that encouragement and based on the support of the association and the continued efforts of the many individuals that have gone forward to ensure that these studies continue to be funding, that we will still be here. So thank you for that response. We have time for a few more questions, and we have several. So let's see if we can do a few rapid fire and get some answers before individuals move on to something else. But around risk factors associated with Alzheimer's disease, for example, genetics. What does genetics play into risk? And can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we know if you have a first degree family member, a parent, or a sibling that had Alzheimer's specifically, you are at an increased risk. But that is just it, it's risk. There are people that have a parent who never develop Alzheimer's, and there are people that don't, and they do. So it's a contributing factor to the overall makeup. And today there have been a little over 100, maybe even more, 100 different genetic variations that have been identified as being associated with both increasing and decreasing risk. Now, that being said, we don't completely understand what all of them do. We're still learning. That's where the research is so incredibly important, so we can understand the role that those genes are playing and what that means to the underlying biology. And then we can hopefully translate that to interventions and therapies that can help people and hopefully get ahead of it as well.
Another question we are often asked is particularly the risk around caregivers. There is the statement, there are findings associating being a caregiver with being at an increased risk of dementia. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it is that, you know, taking care of your overall health is really important for your brain health. Our brain is the control center of everything that we do. And so making sure that you go to those appointments and you do your follow-up for your own health is really the only way to ensure that you're able to take care of your the person that you're providing care for. I can say that, but I also recognize that's incredibly difficult. And so I think, there are a lot of challenges to how to do that. And if you don't have other resources or family that can help with the care, providing care, how do you do that? I will say the Alzheimer's Association has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline, helpline that is there to help individuals that may need it in terms of the overall that are navigating, trying how to figure out how to get these services or these resources and what that needs. And I know they're going to share the website. I want to just spit it out because I think people probably aren't writing it down. They're going to share the website on the link here, but it is alz.org. And you can access both online ways of getting information or strategies that may help you get the care that, follow up your own care as a caregiver, as well as the helpline that you can use and call as a resource to talk through. This is my issue. I need to have this appointment. How do I do that?
That's excellent. And I will add to your fantastic comments there that it's really exciting and encouraging to see the amount of research going forward to understand how to best support caregivers and design programs that are also going to protect them and stave off potentially that risk as they care for their loved ones and they continue to live life and deal with the challenges that they have to deal with. With that, I think we have another question that is related to some of what you shared earlier, and you spoke a little bit about sleep, but we want to understand a little bit more about the role that sleep might play in contributing as a risk factor, or the absence of sleep in contributing as a risk factor to cognitive impairment with age.
Yeah, so I mean, when we sleep, our brain goes through changes
Mhm.
and underlying biology that, again, benefited and it's over, keep it as healthy as it can, and allows it to almost take out the trash and clear out any of the junk from the day, but also provides really important ways for the brain to refresh and function in its maximum capacity. So, not unlike an oil change in your car, if you will, right? I mean, you're kind of making sure that your car has all of the nutrients and all the things that it needs, and is poised to be at its best function. And sleep does that. And there's been a number of studies that have told us that sleep apnea or sleep disturbances are also linked to a higher risk of cognitive decline and dementia. And there have been small studies so far that have shown as an intervention, for instance, in individuals with sleep apnea, when we intervene with CPAP, one of the treatments that is used, that there is a benefit in reducing that risk. There are larger studies going on right now to really better understand that, but the role of sleep has consistently demonstrated its impact, and it's really that quality of sleep. There's been studies to suggest 7 hours plus or minus 2 hours as somewhat of that maximal best sleep time, if you will, and then ensuring that you're getting the quality of sleep that you are. I think one of the things that's sleep is more similar to our heart or a metabolic health, and that there are things we can do about it. So if we're having sleep issues, if we're having sleep disturbances, we can have that conversation with our healthcare provider and hopefully intervene in a way that benefits our brain health long term.
That's fantastic, and thank you for all of this and for sharing all that you know with our APT Web Study participants. I have one very last question, and this is particularly around the APT Web Study. And one of the questions that is being asked is from someone who's been an APT Web Study participant for a while. And are there any interesting or provocative correlations from the tests we have taken in the APT Web Study at this junction? And I can go ahead and take that and take it briefly. But I do want to share that we are learning, and we are learning a lot. We are aiming to put a lot more into the scientific space so that you have access to findings around this. We're starting to see associations with cognition. We are able now to introduce blood testing into APT Web Study and evaluate associations of that, which is a biological measure, particularly with the cognitive measures that we are collecting in a subset of individuals that have participated in blood screens. So if you are invited and you continue participating in your branch study, you are contributing to those analyses and to that data so that we can better understand those associations. Immediately, we are working on those analyses, and we will be putting out some of that data soon, and we'll be happy to continue to appraise you as that data evolves. But at this time, I'm not at the liberty to immediately say we have this particular correlation or association with anything in particular. And with that, we are coming to a close of our session. And I want to say that on behalf of the APT Web Study team, I want to extend our deepest gratitude to you, Heather, for sharing your expertise and your insights with us today. And I really want to encourage you for further information to our participants and attendees today, that for further information and recently released association facts and figures, please take the link, note it down, or go to alz.org, and you will find some additional resources there that are consistent with the conversations that we've just had. Please stay tuned for future opportunities to engage in Alzheimer's prevention clinical research. If you or someone you know might be interested in participating in the APT Web Study, please visit our website by scanning the QR code on your screen right now, or visiting the web link in the chat, the aptwebstudy.org. We will be holding another webinar in the coming months. Please watch for an email with details about upcoming events. We really welcome your feedback and invite you to complete the brief survey link that will be posted on the chat, as you can see showing now. If we were unable to answer your question today, please know that all the questions that you submitted will be reviewed and may help inform the focus of future discussions, as well as things that we communicate through the newsletter and additional materials that we hope to share with you and keep you informed. A recording of today's webinar will be shared with participants following the event. For technical questions related to your assessments, or for additional assistance, remember to please contact our call center at 1-858-877-3135. Once more, thank you so much for joining us today.